Hello friends that live within the internet, my name is John and in this video we will be looking at the JAMstack. Now the JAMstack, which stands for JavaScript and Markup, is a brand new architecture and way of building websites. Now you may be thinking, so what, JavaScript and Markup, we've had that for years. However, some of the concepts and the new ways of building websites are pretty cool. Now JAMstack is fairly new, it's been around for about 5 years, however in the last year or two it is getting a lot more traction. So what we're going to do in this video and this series is we're going to go over the JAMstack, explain what it is and why it's cool and why you should care about it, and then throughout the series what we're going to be doing is just going through all the different CMSs, the different technologies, and even if you don't know anything about JavaScript whatsoever, you will learn how you can create some cool websites really easily, really cheaply, which is going to probably blow your little minds. Now, if you haven't come across my videos before, my name is John, as I was saying. Hit that subscribe button. I do weekly YouTube videos on web development and productivity. So let's start looking at what is this JAMstack. Okay, so let's kick things off talking about the architecture. Now on the screen right in front of me here, you will see more of a traditional type of CMS architecture. So in this architecture, you're probably all very familiar with it. We have our web user, let's call him Martinez. So Martinez makes a web request, it comes to our server. Now our server also has the CMS, so we just have this one thing. Now as the request comes in, the CMS server doesn't know anything about this page, so it has to go off and it has to figure things out itself. So this means it has to run all the code, has to calculate stuff, and then it has to get that HTML and then send it back to the client. Now because this process takes a little bit of time, what most sensible web developers do is they start adding some caching layers, potentially they add some CDNs, so it will be a little bit quicker. So as you can see here, we're processing our request, we're caching it, and then we're passing it back to the user. Now on a second page request, somebody else is going to request the same page. Instead of going to the server, it now may go to the CDN. However, there is an issue with this architecture because if the server is down, then the website is down. And this is a bit of a dilemma. We've all seen issues where there's a bug in your code and the website is completely down. Say there's an issue in your menu, the whole site can be down because of a coding issue. And this is one of the problems when we're using server-side and dynamically rendered HTML and server-side markup. Okay, so let's compare the traditional architecture with the JAMstack architecture. Now on the screen you can see the JAMstack setup. It is slightly different when you compare it to the traditional model. So let's see why it's different and why it's cool. So when Martinez now makes his web request, instead of him going to the server and the server trying to figure out how to render that page, he is going to the edge network. Sounds all modern and trendy, doesn't it? It basically just means a CDN, just a fancy word for a CDN. There's a little bit more, we'll go over it later, but just think CDN for now. Now, as you can see in our diagram, we've got static site, and this is where one of the big differences between the JAMstack comes in. So instead of us going to a server and then the server-side code figures out the page, what happens is we just have static HTML. Now, how does this work? Let's have a look. As you can see in the top right-hand side, we still have our headless CMS. So what happens is when a content editor comes in, they make CMS changes, they click the publish button. What happens within a JAMstack architecture is you have this continuous delivery pipeline. So what happens is every single time someone clicks publish, all these static sites and all the static file is updated. This is then pushed into the CDN. So as you can see, Martinez never goes back to a server. Martinez never talks to our CMS whatsoever. So this is actually a lot nicer and it's a lot more stable. Because imagine our headless CMS is down or there's an issue with our backend servers, it doesn't make a difference anymore. All these static files can be hosted in S3 or some really simple and easy website hosting. So this means that our website hosting is going to be a lot cheaper in the JAMstack as well. Now you might be looking at this and going, just static HTML, that's a bit useless. What about my e-commerce website? I can't just statically generate all my pricing and all that sort of good stuff within HTML files. And this is, remember, JAMstack, so JavaScript and markup. So one of the clever things about this, if you had any research on Gatsby or Next.js, what you can do is sort of run things in a hybrid mode. So what happens is that when you have this static site, you can still launch React. So even though you're statically generating all of your web pages, what happens is that when you get to static site and it gets put back into the client's browser, the React engine can still load. You can still work in an SPA mode. You can still make client-side calls to APIs. You can still update content. So with this architecture, you can see that now we're decoupled from all that back-end logic. We actually have a lot more flexibility. Things are actually a lot more quicker, and our architecture is more stable because we're not relying on a server. I have definitely had live website production issues where, say, there's been a bug in the menu and then that menu bug has taken down the whole site because a code issue can completely screw up your website. Within the JAMstack, you don't really have the same type of risk. Because you're working with static HTML, it is very easy to just deploy stuff and you know that your pages aren't going to break because you've just got static HTML. So it's a really good architecture, and this is probably the way I can see most websites being built moving forward. So let us consider why I think you should be thinking that the JAMstack is cool. Okay, so first we've got that performance. Everyone loves lightning fast, greasy performance, as they say in Rocky. And obviously because we're just converting all of our website into HTML and markup, things are going to be as quick as they can. I mean, you can't really get much quicker than serving back some static HTML files. Also, because we're working with HTML, our website is going to be more secure. Now, back in the day when I was writing stuff like ASP.NET, if you're creating web forms, you actually had a load of issues around SQL injection and all that nastiness. When we're using the JAMstack and HTML, we're forced to use APIs, so things are actually a little bit more secure and nicer. So that's a nice benefit. Obviously, because we're just hosting static HTML files, our hosting is going to be much cheaper. We don't need to have all that high performance CPU that we did in a traditional back-end server-side architecture. So things just need to be simple. All we need to do is find somewhere which can host our files, like an S3 bucket. After that, things are golden, so your hosting will be cheaper. Now, at the moment, Netlify is the leading hosting solution for the JAMstack. In fact, the guy from Netlify coined the term JAMstack, and with Netlify you can set up websites for free, so it's well worth looking at. And now, because we don't have any backend, our development costs are actually much easier. So back in the day, potentially you needed a C# developer to write some of the backend logic, and then a front-end guy to create the front-end stuff. Now, because everything is just front-end, you can get rid of that back-end guy. So if you work in a company and you have to hire people like I do, this is actually much cheaper in staffing costs because you only need to hire the JavaScript guys. So JavaScript will rule the world. Okie dokie, I think it's time to look at the autonomy of what makes up a JAMstack website. So when we're talking JAMstack, you will hear a lot of people banging on about this edge network stuff. Edge network this, edge network that, it's great. And as I was saying, when you're thinking about edge network, basically just think CDN. So traditionally, when a website was being made, a request would be made to the server. Now, if the server had in some sort of caching and a CDN installed, then the files would be distributed across the whole world. So obviously, if someone was in America and they're trying to make a request to my website hosted in the UK, the request will take longer than someone trying to make a request from the UK itself. So this is what a CDN is for. The edge network is basically just an inbuilt CDN. So think about it this way. Now we're just working with static HTML files. We don't need to worry about cache times. We don't have to do anything special whatsoever. When you're using a hosting company like Netlify, this has the edge network built into it. What this means is that when it's hosting your static files for you, it will automatically push everything around the world using edge side servers. So with an edge side server, it's basically the thing at the far edge of a network. So having all these edge network servers talk to each other just means that the data gets transferred quicker. If you want to learn more about edge side research and technologies, give it a Google. There's probably some amazing websites out there which will explain it a lot better and nicer than I will. However, you get the gist of it. The point of the edge network is to globally distribute all of your files across the world so it's nice and quick. So the next thing we want to talk about is the atomic deploys. I could barely say that then. Atomic deploys. So what this means is because each time we're making that publish in the CMS, we're creating a static set of files. So each time we do a deployment into production, we have a point in time of our website. And this is really nice in terms of release management and strategy. So think about it. I make a change in the CMS, we push some code out, there's a mistake in our code, nightmare. We want to roll it back. All we have to do is switch your hosting to point to the old set of files. Instantly, the website's going to be up and running again. And this is the really cool thing about atomic deploys, is that each time that you do a request or a change, it's going to have its own set of files. Say if you're using Netlify, it's going to remember the last 10 or 20, however much it is. So it's really quick just to jump forward, jump back. This is a really nice thing that you don't get in traditional server-side websites. Because in a traditional server-side website, you've got multiple things. Say you've got dynamic content from a CMS, you have code running in different branches in different states. So you don't really have this atomic deploys. So this is a really, really nice, beneficial thing about using the JAMstack. Now you might be thinking, how does all this magic work? When I click the publish button within my CMS, how does that magically make all these static files work? And this is through the webhook. So webhooks are a big thing within JAMstack websites. Every single thing that you have and use, it'll pretty much have a webhook. So what will happen is that when you click the publish button, you'll need to manually add in this webhook from Netlify into your content form, or the other way around, whichever way it is. You click that publish button, it will then trigger Netlify. Netlify will then do a build, and then it will push it out to the edge network. And this is how it all hangs together. Now, the other bit which you might be worried about or confused about is how are the files actually created? How is this static site generation bit working? And this is where a whole suite of tools are now coming into play. And this is stuff like Gatsby, Next.js, there's one called Nuxt. I think there's about 10 or 20 of them now. There's a one called Sapper for Svelte, if you're into that sort of thing, which is pretty cool. I like that, recommend it. And this is how we're converting our website and our CMS data into static sites. All of these frameworks are being built within Next.js. You'll have a script within your package.json within Next.js called export. So what will happen is that when you deploy your code, Netlify will simply run like a npm run export. This will then find your code, it will then get all the data from the CMS, and it will generate those static files for you. You then tell Netlify where your publish directory is. It will then read this publish directory and then spread it across the edge network. And this basically is the autonomy of how JAMstack websites are built. Pretty cool, don't you think? Now, it does sound, when I first heard about the JAMstack, I sort of glossed over it as, it doesn't sound that incredible. JavaScript and markup. But when you start going into stuff like atomic deploys, when you start talking about the edge networks, it's actually really, really cool. And it's actually a really exciting time. And let's explain what I mean by why it is an exciting time. Surprise! Now, as you can see on the screen right in front of us, you can see loads of different names and logos. And this represents just a small fraction of all the different companies that you can work with in the JAMstack. Now, this is a really cool, interesting thing, and I think this is the most exciting part of the JAMstack in my opinion. Now, I'm traditionally from a C# background, so most people watching this are probably watching my videos on Episerver or Amabraco, which are great CMSs. However, I would say that out of those CMSs, they tend to try and focus on too much. Now, when we work with the JAMstack, you'll hear this term best of breed banged on over and over as well. Now, best of breed is a new sort of paradigm shift when it comes to companies building things. Now, say take a Episerver. In Episerver, they do a bit of personalization, they do commerce, they do media management, they do CMS, they do stats, analytics, CDP. And what happens over time is they get a load of bloat. And also, some of these products, they're not really that great, if I'm honest. Now, the thing about best of breed is you get these companies which are now laser focused just on one thing. So as you can see on the screen right in front of us, we have a company called Algolia. And if you haven't come across Algolia, they just do search. Now, the nice thing is that Algolia starts for free. It's really cheap and easy. Their search is super quick and it gives you loads and loads of functionalities. So this is the really cool thing about it. Now, another one you can see on there is Cloudinary. Now, Cloudinary does media. So it allows you to add images and videos, allows you to crop them, apply effects, make things small, big, just all of that sort of good stuff. However, it does it really, really well. An example of a headless CMS, Contentful there. Contentful integrates with all these different providers, so it's really good. And the good thing about Contentful is it just focuses on doing CMS stuff really well. So it allows you to build environments, it allows you to do all the content management, the content modeling, all the stuff you'd expect from a CMS. And this for me is the really, really exciting thing about JAMstack. And this is what this series is going to go into. So if I've teased you into JAMstack and it sounds good and you want to learn a little bit more, then follow on with my series. Hit the subscribe button now, because every 2 weeks I'll be publishing a video on the JAMstack. Obviously, I'll still be doing my videos on productivity and Epi7 and Bracco and all that sort of good stuff. However, the focus for the next couple of months is going to be on the JAMstack. So what you're going to get out of it is, regardless if you know JavaScript or just know C#, what we'll go through on each video is step by step, looking at some of these providers, looking at how you can set things up, looking at how you can create your own edge networks, push things out, how to create APIs, how to create CMS systems, what CMS options you have. So it's going to be really fun, really exciting. I'm actually really looking forward to it. I think it's really cool. This year, say for the last 6 months, I've been building quite a lot of JAMstack websites. And one thing I can say is I've been building websites quicker, faster and easier than I ever have before. So I definitely recommend that you give this series a try, because I think you're going to get a lot of value out of it. And that concludes the end of another video. I hope I piqued your interest in the JAMstack, and I hope you'll be watching again, so hit that subscribe button. Anyway, I'm not going to waste some time because this video has been going on for ages. Hope you have an amazing day, people, and happy coding.